Hocus Pocus, we're live. Finally. I think I've made jokes about Split Take being live before, but now...
Well, it's just
Now
as
we are.
live as it's always been. We just now have video.
Now with video.
There is visual proof of our existence. This is not an elaborate bit done by a guy creating two characters of similar but also different film taste and creating a podcast out of it. This is two people with faces and rooms to record
We
this.
have real faces. We are, in
It's
fact,
true.
real people. You can now confirm for yourself, unless, of course, this is a deep fake and 4D chess, where it's a fake podcast, but real. Who knows? Who knows?
Layers.
You know,
Layers.
I might have even mentioned this before on the podcast, but I've something I've heard from my dad before is that we apparently sound similar.
Do we?
I don't know.
I don't
we
think so at all.
But he thinks so. And so that's
White people,
that's
they all sound the
interesting.
same.
Maybe, but now
don't.
someone could physically distinguish the two of us as two distinct people, which we are, and we have
That's true.
two distinct film perspectives, which doesn't always manifest itself on the podcast, but it most certainly does in a few select films.
Thus, you get the split take.
Yes, the rare
The titular split take.
gemstone. It would be too obvious to name a podcast called Split Take, where every episode is someone disagreeing. No, the real subtle podcast titling is when it's very rare. Very rarely is there split.
Only if it's Justice League.
Welcome to the Split Take podcast. If this is the first time, I'm going to guess that there may be first-time listeners viewing this episode because it's going on YouTube and there are people, and people tend to click on YouTube videos with people's faces on them more.
It's true.
That's just a thing. So, welcome to Split Take Podcast. I am your co-host, Jacob.
And I'm your other co-host, Chandler.
And we're here to talk about movies. Just a quick rundown. Every episode, we talk about two movies most of the time. One movie is whatever the hell we feel like it, usually a new movie, if there is one. And the second movie we talk about is from the BFI Sight and Sound 2012 Best Films of All Time list, the critics and the directors list. This week, we're going to be talking combined. Yes. Through a wonderful algorithm and spreadsheet, we have figured out the optimal way of combining the critics and the directors' opinions. Even though I think at this point we have foregone the order as we've skipped a few.
No, we just do whatever we feel like.
Yeah, these days.
Yeah.
It's kind of still in order. Anyway,
Yeah, it's fine.
so this week our free choice of the week is going to be Ghostbusters, the original, because Chandler had never seen it before. And our BFI movie of the week is from the critics list, and it is Sherlock Jr. from 1924, directed by Buster Keaton. Why we are in an interesting scenario. This is a very interesting episode to record on video because we already recorded it. Would you like to tell them the circumstances that have led up to this particular recording session?
We recorded this last week or 2 weeks ago, and then Jacob recorded the audio wrong, so we couldn't use that. So now we're here. And coincidentally, it lined up with Jacob's decision to start recording this, like the video of it. So
now
we're
doing
also the only other time this has happened was me losing the audio for our Blade Runner discussion. So it's happened before, but never on this massive a scale.
Yeah, we still haven't re-recorded that Blade Runner audio, but that'll be coming out eventually. And I might as well take the time to mention that this will probably come out very soon. And the issue with that is that there are like 10 episodes I have yet to edit. These episodes are all audio only. So
audio only.
It's gonna be a little jump forward, and then we'll have to go back, and I'll release those as we go along. But I think for the most part, our future episodes will be video. And as per usual, as per custom, it's more fun. I mean, we obviously see each other record every time anyway, so might as well do it on Zoom and hit record.
Mm-hmm.
That way we have it.
That way we have it.
So, as per tradition, we usually start off with a good chunk of time discussing what we have been watching each week and just check in of our cinematic diary and what else has been going on. So, Chandler, what have you been watching?
Well, it's difficult because I want to talk about the things that I watched last time, but I don't remember what those things were. So I'm just going to go through my letterbox, find the stuff that I really want to talk about, and then go for it.
Good plan.
I watched a new movie. Probably my first one of my first new watches of the year, and that was Eric Andre's Bad Trip.
I saw that on Netflix.
Yeah, it's Netflix. It's
okay.
This has a really weird release history. So initially, it was bought by Amazon last year, and it was supposed to come out on Amazon. And then somehow it got leaked, so it was on Amazon Prime like 3 or 2 months ahead of its release for free for like 2 days. And then somebody realized that was going on. They took it off Amazon. Then Amazon canceled their plans to release it, and then it got bought by Netflix, and now it's on Netflix a year later.
That is most certainly a journey. I didn't even know that.
It is strange. Wow. I really like Eric Andre. I think he's absolutely hilarious. His show is one of the funniest things currently on television. So it's similar to like Borat and Bruno, where it's like a prank show. It's kind of like just goofing on people. But this movie is strange because they craft like a very simple rom-com like narrative, and they act out that narrative through these live pranks. So it's a combination of like
it's pranks with a narrative throughout. They're trying to conform the pranks to the narrative.
Yes,
a bit. Okay.
So the basic premise is that Eric Andre has a chance run-in with his high school crush, who is now like an art gallery woman, and she like casually invites him to go to her art expo in New York. So these two friends steal one of their sister's cars and drive through to New York. And there's a bunch of pranks along the way. Some of it's very funny. Some of it's very childish, but very funny. Just seeing, but the difference between something like this and like Borat and Bruno is that Borat and Bruno, they kind of make fun of the people that are in the movie for good reason, especially in Borat.
Yes.
Some horrible people in Borat.
Deserving of
this
ridicule.
one, yes. In this one, it is mainly unsuspecting, just citizens. But they really, through these pranks, give these people time to shine. And it's a movie that made me feel weirdly good inside. Because a lot of these pranks that happen, you have some people who are really sticking their neck out for the cast of this movie in a way that reaffirms me that there's still some good in the world. It was not what I was expecting in that regard. It's a very unique movie, and I recommend it because it's on Netflix. And it's 83 minutes. It's funny, very stupid, but very funny.
I'm definitely gonna watch it. I saw it. I saw you had watched it, and then I saw it on Netflix, and I was like, why the hell not?
Yeah,
I was almost tempted to watch it the other night, just on the spur of a moment when I found it. But I'll reserve it. Maybe in a week or so.
It's good. I watched Casino Royale. Pretty good.
You have to specify because there is a older Casino Royale.
Is there really? The new one, the newer one.
The Daniel Craig James Bond
15 years old. Yeah,
Jesus
Daniel Craig.
Christ, wow.
Yep,
15 years old. I don't know. Maybe it seems older, or maybe it doesn't.
2006.
I'm just like it seems.
Yeah. It felt newer to me.
That it is. It does. It's a film that probably could have come out today. It's still like that style is still very much used.
It still feels very modern. It's if I remember correctly, it's the first Daniel Craig James Bond.
Yep. That
Mads
Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, and
Spectre.
Yeah.
Yep. It's pretty good. Mads Mikkelsen, I saw it because of him. He's great.
Of course.
Mads Mikkelsen, I will say, exits the movie. And when he exits the movie is not as good of a movie. But the action's really good.
Forget how long he exits the film, and then there's like another half hour, or is it more?
Yeah, there's like a good 30 minutes.
Okay.
And like 10 of those 30 minutes is just wrapping up stuff that doesn't matter, because the next 20 minutes is it's good. It's pretty good. I'm on an action movie kick. I really like Mads Mikkelsen. I checked it out. I don't regret it. Now all I have to do is watch Spectre and Quantum of Solace. I watched Gremlins. It's pretty great. It's really, really sloppy in terms of like screenwriting and structure. But the Gremlins are undeniably masterfully crafted as far as like creatures go.
Gremlins is one of those movies that I always like, I swear I've seen, but I haven't. I just feel like I must have seen that. I feel like I remember seeing it, but I haven't seen it.
It's good.
Maybe it's all the footage that the Mike Stoklasa and the Red Letter Media Plinkett reviews uses some footage from that.
Yeah.
From Gremlins.
Cool. Because
maybe
they're very big fans of it, and after I watched it, I listened to the commentary track, which really helped me to appreciate its charm while also be even more critical of its flaws. Because there's just really weird structural decisions that don't really pay off, but it's still fun. I watched Crimson Peak, Guillermo del Toro. Not bad. Another one of those things where structurally it's kind of dumb, because it's like it spends 45 minutes setting up this subplot that goes nowhere. Which that's always fun when a movie does that. But I recommend it.
Well, I mean, that must have been Guillermo del Toro's precursor to him getting ready to make Shape of Water.
No.
Which is filled
Here
with
is a split take.
That don't go
Here
anywhere.
is a split take. One that we haven't commented on because it's been 4 years, but I love Shape of Water.
I think it's
Jacob
horribly overrated.
Is not based. Ooh. Is it better than Green Book?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I'm just saying.
A great many things are better than Green Book.
That's true.
Simply for the fact that Green Book is Green Book, and nothing to do with the quality in and of itself. But no, I have given Shape of Water its due. I've seen it more than once. Same reaction both times.
See, I've only seen it once, and it was a very odd experience, because I remember seeing it. I saw it in a theater by myself, and I remember coming out of it being like amazed. And I immediately texted our group chat, and I said, like, guys, I saw Shape of Water. It was amazing, not knowing that you and Nate had already seen it. And then I was just treated with a bunch of, really? You liked that? Shape of Water is very good. Two quick ones real quick. At Eternity's Gate, I watched this. It was kind of bad.
What is At Eternity's Gate?
That is the one.
Oh, that's the one. Yes. Okay.
Willem Dafoe is Van Gogh. Willem Dafoe. I
saw
liked
that.
Willem
One
Dafoe.
second. Yeah, of course. I actually saw that on Netflix, and I'm always looking through Netflix to find movies that my mom may like, as I think I've mentioned on the podcast before. Violence, horror, fantasy, sci-fi, those are all out. None of it. Get rid of it. So I really have to focus in, and At Eternity's Gate was one that I was like, oh, might watch that with her. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
She might like it. I personally did not like it because it felt so student filmy. And by that, I mean, it's a lot of characters that just show up for one scene to have these weirdly intrusive philosophical conversations. And in between these scenes is just a bunch of scenes of Willem Dafoe walking through nature in like the woods, in the Dutch greenery. Willem Dafoe is great. He's always great.
Of course.
But he's playing a man who I have a passing knowledge of Van Gogh. I know he wasn't in his 70s when he died. He's playing very old, and it's funny because they have like scenes with his brother, Theo Van Gogh. And the guy who plays him is the guy who, The guy who plays him is the guy who plays Stalin's son in The Death of Stalin.
What marvelous.
So first of all, I can't see him as anything else but Stalin's son. And
Right.
second of all, they're talking about being brothers and growing up together. One man's clearly like 38. The other guy's like pushing 70. I can only excuse that so far. But this movie, above all else, was boring and uninspired. And the camera work was weirdly claustrophobic. Lots of like insane close-ups on faces during conversations. And the way that they portray Van Gogh's mental illness, they just use like just the cheapest like editing tricks in the book where, you know, it's like they artificially slow down time, then they overlap footage over each other.
Right.
Conversations that played out in the previous scene are echoed back in his subconscious. It's just, it's the most student filmy kind of movie ever. And there's the guy who's made some stuff that people like. It's the same director as The Diving Bell and the Butterfly.
Oh, that's
which I know
movie.
People really love. That guy is even in this movie briefly. The French guy.
Ah, as a French man.
The guy's in the Grand Budapest Hotel, yeah.
The actor.
Yeah. And lastly, I'm going to end this with my number one movie of the year so far, Fitzcarraldo.
Which
I finally got around to watching Fitzcarraldo.
You got around to watching another Werner Herzog. What is this? This is Herzog number 3?
This is, 3. Because I've seen Nosferatu and Aguirre, whatever.
Yeah.
I've been getting into a lot of German.
On the podcast.
Yes.
Still haven't edited that.
Yeah, that was a recent one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is amazing. This movie's incredible. I was very attracted to this idea because it's two of my favorite kinds of movies. The kinds of movies where people yell at God and the kinds of movies that have boats.
Double whammy.
Double whammy. So I was interested from the start. Klaus Kinski is one of those people that I just find fascinating as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's ever been an actor that commands the screen more than him. He's just so menacing and interesting and odd that every moment that he's on screen, you're just glued to whatever it is he's doing. Maybe that's why people think he's a good actor. I think he's just a good actor in general. But it's like this, because I watched this, and then right after that, I watched Burden of Dreams, which is the documentary about the making of this, which for some reason I thought was made by Herzog, but it's not. It's like this weird thing where the behind the scenes story of the movie is also pretty crazy. And
most certainly.
Yeah, and a lot of
that you'd expect that from Herzog.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the stuff that Herzog did is pretty similar to what Fitzcarraldo, the character himself, actually did. Because you could argue that he exploited the native people. I mean, like, he paid them, but a lot of what he was doing was ethically shaky, and a few people even died in the making of this movie because it was rivaling native tribes fighting each other about the river that they were using. And I don't know. It's a very, very good movie. It's one of those things where
feels
it's like
very mythic, almost monumentally mythic in the grand scope of cinema, because it is like Herzog does actually lift this boat over water and goes through like so much stuff to make this, like, it's all practical. The things that happen in the film and actually going down that river is wow. Like, even more so, like, Aguirre, The Wrath of God is kind of a small film in comparison.
Yeah.
And I think for me, ultimately, Klaus Kinski's performance, if I remember correctly, was for me more his presence as a physically intimidating actor works more in Fitzcarraldo and with that character and the whole world that Herzog builds around it, and with the kind of insane plan that character wants to do. I think it all comes together in a way that's why I like Fitzcarraldo more. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that I knew this is based on a true story. And then they're explaining the true story in the documentary. And apparently the real guy, he didn't pull the boat over the hill. He disassembled the boat, brought all the parts over to the other side of the hill, and reassembled the boat. And then Herzog's like, that is not as interesting. We're going to drag the boats over the hill. And then everyone's like, that's
stare death in the face to make a film that is worth anyone watching.
Well, it's crazy because he like reimagined this history as something more interesting, but at the same time, everybody's like, you can't do that. You can't pull a boat over the hill. So what you're seeing is not only like Fitzcarraldo's attempt to drag this boat over a hill, but it's also Werner Herzog's attempt to do the exact same thing. So there's like this metatextual like element to this movie that I find really fascinating. But yeah, it's masterpiece. It's currently my favorite movie of the year that I've seen for the first time.
Wow. Yeah. Yes. I'm surprised. I was expecting you to like it. I was not expecting you to like it that much. That's
boats.
Pretty cool.
In philosophy.
Are you
You don't
do
get
you like boats? Is that a thing?
I love boats. I'm a nautical fan.
Nautical fan.
That's why I like The Lighthouse. That's why I like Pirates of the Caribbean. That's why I like Lifeboat.
I guess I'll have to find some more boat movies for you. I can't think of any right off the top of my head. But
isn't that one of the new Agatha Christie's? That's
Death on the Nile.
Death on the Nile. That's a boat movie.
There are quite a few Agatha Christie boat related mysteries. That's something she liked to do.
So I also like Captain Phillips.
That's another. I haven't thought about Captain Phillips in a long time.
I think of too much. Continue.
Speaking of Agatha Christie, forgive me for going over all of this again because I did talk about it last episode. Fine. I'm currently working. It's apology to you, but also an introduction for the rest of the audience. I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan. Like I don't.
Now, is it Agatha Christie specifically, or the murder mystery genre?
Both.
Because I feel like she's kind of the queen of it all.
She is.
I know you also like Knives Out.
I do. I love murder mysteries in general. Like they're just great. Like something about that genre and the particularly the Britishness of her novels, which I think surprisingly translates into Knives Out well. Because it's interesting how a lot of murder mysteries are based around some kind of like class conflict. Like that's something kind of inherently involved in a lot of murder mysteries because either revenge because someone's wealthier or more successful than you, or killing someone because you want their money. Anyway, but that's a very British thing to do, and then which is why I think Knives Out works well. But neither here nor there. But the thing I love about Agatha Christie is, following along the mysteries and like trying to figure it out. But, as I rewatch them, because I rewatch them all the time, it's fun seeing those clues and like piecing it together retrospectively. And sometimes I forget the mysteries or like the solution is right on the tip of my tongue. I'm like, what were the clues that fit together? I know it's this person, but I've recently been rewatching a lot of the Agatha Christie's Poirot TV show, which is one of my favorite things ever, period.
And how long has it been running?
Late 1980s to finished in 2013. And it is 70 episodes long. It was like, they were like mini seasons.
Only 70 episodes?
Sort of.
Oh,
yeah, yeah. So what they did is they adapted every single Hercule Poirot mystery. So there's 70 of them, including short stories. And the earlier seasons, I think the first 5 or 6, were short 45, 50-minute episodes. And those are a lot of fun. They're very light and breezy, and it's harder to follow the mysteries there. They feel more superficial in a way that, it's hard to cram the psychology of the characters in there, which Agatha Christie likes to do, particularly with the detective Poirot, who's all about analyzing people's psychology. And then later on, there's like a break where I think the producer of the television show changed. There was a slight hiatus in the late 90s, and the style of the show changed to be more serious, dramatic, and kind of a big, lavish TV show. Style-wise, think Downton Abbey, that kind of prestige British drama, and it both styles of the two halves of the series are they have their own merits. And for that second half of the series, there was like 5 episodes per season, and they were all feature length TV movies. So 90 minutes, some were even approaching 2 hours. But it's interesting. I still pop them in like candy. Like I'll watch one 90-minute episode. I'm like, I can go for another. It's just a TV episode. But yeah, I just keep watching them. And every year I usually go back and rewatch them. I think at this point I've seen every episode at least 5 times.
All 70?
All 70 episodes. Yes.
Wow.
Some maybe more. One of these days I will recommend one. And I've been rewatching the series, I'm like, which one do I want to recommend, Chandler? do I want to show you the comical, overly British first half of the TV show, where it's aggressively British, as I've claimed before, and it's very funny, and I cannot think of a more British thing in the world. Or do I want to recommend one of the later ones? But who knows? The first one I ever watched.
The same guy playing Poirot all throughout.
Yes, David Suchet, the one and only true Hercule Poirot. There are others, and they're pretty good too. But there's only one, David Suchet, and
he's the Heath Ledger of Poirot. Yeah,
I think that is a adequate comparison. Except obviously he was alive a bit longer to play that character. A tad.
Yeah.
Still kicking it, still doing stuff. Pretty cool. Have you? This is a
legacy.
Complete tangent. Have you ever heard of The Play That Goes Wrong? So it's a British theatrical production that I think was like the entirety of it was on YouTube for a while, and they do this shtick where they put on a play, and the joke of the play is that the actors in the play keep messing up and everything keeps going wrong with the production of it, and they like try to pass it off, and it's actually one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But David Suchet plays a narrator. They did a version of Peter Pan, which is absolutely wonderfully charming and hilarious, and he plays the narrator for that particular stage production. And there's a really one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life, after having been a Poirot fan for years at that point. Like halfway through, 2/3 of the way through the stage production, someone gets knocked out on stage by a falling light or something, and no one knows what to do. So David Suchet stands up. Obviously, they're in England, so people know about the Poirot series, and he's like, "Madame et Monsieur, there has been a murder," and he goes into the Poirot character for like 5 seconds, and it's completely unexpected and marvelous. But
did he actually get knocked out, or is that like a joke?
It's a joke.
Oh
yeah. I think there's like a short clip I could send you, but it's funny. There is actually, there's on YouTube. I'll include a link. I think it's like the murder at Marston Manor. I think I might be including like 5 references in there somewhere. But there's a clip where they put on like a short 10-minute production that's kind of like a taster of what they do. So maybe I'll send that to you. It's funny, and I think it's a murder mystery. And anywho, Agatha Christie's Poirot, I recommend it. The end of that diatribe, I guess, is that, and I'm currently working on a analysis of the various adaptations of Murder on the Orient Express. I think there's 5 or 6, depending on how you want to count them.
You've seen it here, folks. We do it all. French New Wave, Full Metal Alchemist, Poirot. We are truly jacks of many trades.
And every once in a while, an actual film classic. Like Ghostbusters.
Like,
Spoiler
alert.
So I watched those. And then I watched the Thomas Vinterberg's The Hunt, which is one of my favorite things I've watched this year for me, because that is just one epic movie. Freaking love Thomas Vinterberg. I don't understand. Yeah.
No, epic is not the best word, because it's not like some crazy giant scale movie. It's pretty.
My feelings for it are epic.
Yes.
How much I like it not the film
Yes.
itself.
Well, it's interesting because that particular movie, I feel like, is even more relevant than it was 8 or 9 years ago, whenever it came out. Because the general plot of the movie is that Mads Mikkelsen plays a kindergarten teacher who, after, I don't even remember what he does to the kid. Like, they have some sort of argument, and then the kid accuses him basically of sexual molestation. And he's clearly not guilty of it, but it's just the accusation.
Well, the point is
alone
that, I mean, the film is told from his perspective.
Yeah.
So we know he's not guilty from before.
We know he's not guilty, but it doesn't matter because the accusation alone is enough to drag him through the mud. And this is 2012 when it came out, and obviously it's a pretty everlasting concept. But in the current social climate, it's even more like, I don't know. It's something that immediately pulls you in.
Yes, and in a way that it's strange, because I think if it was made now, it would feel almost pandering, or
it'd feel like the cancel culture
condescending.
Movie.
Yeah, it would feel like that, but it's not, because ironically enough, it is against canceling. It's not really against anything, against or for anything.
It's the same thing with Another Round.
Yes.
That movie's not against or for drinking.
He does the not playing both sides, but showing
centrist cinema.
Centrist cinema. But showing both sides to a argument or to a story, because canceling is a battle of narratives. One narrative of, what the hell are you talking about? I don't deserve to be canceled for this, and then narrative number 2 is, you need to go away. And sometimes it's justified, and other times, in the case of The Hunt, not justified.
No,
I won't speak of any real life examples because I don't think I'm qualified to. But
I'm sure there will be 3 more by the time this episode comes out.
Right. But it is it's such a well-made movie, it's well made in a way that isn't particularly flashy. It's I immediately think of something like Lawrence of Arabia or Citizen Kane, where like the shot composition is telling you a story in and of itself, and it's grandiose. There's a point to how the director's framing things. But with Thomas Vinterberg's filmography, he kind of just lets the camera live in the world of the characters, and he's not doing anything particularly magnificent. Like, there's not low angle shots or high angle shots to give you power dynamics or anything like that. It's just, here's the camera, here are the actors, and he's filming it in this very, like, it's not free form. It feels very controlled and very purposeful, but in a way that isn't as purposeful in the way that, something like Citizen Kane is, that's telling you the story visually. And yet it works.
It's performance-based film that doesn't feel like theater.
It's like John Cassavetes, but polished. Yeah. John Cassavetes is the uncut gem. Speaking of your shirt there. And Thomas Vinterberg is the polished thing that you find in the jewel case later on. Both good, but different.
This is the movie that that made me very interested in Mads Mikkelsen as an actor. So I do think he's a very interesting actor. He's got a lot of range. He can play the dorky dad type, and he can play the Bond villain. But I think in this movie in particular, he's just like, so much is thrown at him, and he breaks in the most subtle of ways. And it's not until like towards the end where you can like see it all, take its full toll. But I feel like with any other actor, it wouldn't be nearly as directly captivating.
And part of the maybe the issue with that style of filmmaking is that now that I look back on it, I'm like, what really happened in the film? Because it takes its time, and not a lot happens, but it's a lot of just characters reacting and all that kind of stuff. But so as I look back, I'm like, is it really 5 stars? But it's something that I'm not really questioning it, because as I was watching it, the experience of watching it was so viscerally entertaining and engrossing, and it shocking engrossing in a way that like you want to turn away, but you can't. And I think that's the case for other Thomas Vinterberg films, which The Celebration, which I still haven't finished, unfortunately. Got halfway through with that about a week and a half ago now.
Oh yeah, you started it. Yeah. Fun.
Yeah. Good movie. Maybe I'll talk about that next time. And then Another Round is also very, very captivating.
Yeah, it's similar. Because above all, a film should be entertaining. It should be captivating. So I agree. It's not flashy, but the way that it is told, like within the first like scene or two, you're there for the whole ride, and that's really what matters to me in a movie. Yeah. Another Round is similar in that when I was watching it, I thought, okay, this is pretty good. I finished it. I thought it was good. But like the more and more I sit with that movie, it's currently my favorite like movie of 2020, like a new movie. Because it's only gotten stronger. I'm sorry, Mank. Mank's a close second. Poor Mank. But he's got a very interesting style. As far as I know, it's a style that really only fully shines in his Danish language movies. The English ones, not as much. All he knows about is that one with Joaquin Phoenix that apparently is meh. But yes, Hunt, very good movie.
I think the only other one I know, Far from the Maddening Crowd. Something like that. I don't know.
It's like Bomb.
I'll probably search out his other movies just to get a taste of his English language oeuvre. But
there's already an English version of Another Round, an American version of Another Round.
Don't know why. Don't know why they need that, but yeah. Hey, what are you gonna do? It won't affect the one, the only Another Round by Thomas Vinterberg. As bad as it could possibly be, we will always have the original.
Well, yeah, it's not a Parasite situation, because obviously the Adam McKay Parasite is going to be much better.
Obviously,
Bong Joon-ho.
If anyone could improve upon perfection, it's Adam McKay.
If anyone can take a subtle story and make it more nuanced, it's Adam McKay.
Okay, quick rundown of a few things. I watched the Outrage trilogy by director Takeshi Kitano.
Yeah.
Who has directed a great many Japanese films. I am a huge fan of the Yakuza genre, and I found those. They were mostly for free on Amazon Prime. The first one wasn't, but after that, everything else was on there for free. Watched it. I am further convinced that everything, 90% of the Yakuza genre is exactly the same tropes, same style, scene composition, same framing devices, everything. It's remarkably consistent as a genre, with some outliers.
It's an echo chamber of style.
Yeah, I mean, the style was created in battles without honor and humanity, and who needs to improve?
Why fix what's not broken?
Why fix it? I recommend those films if you like the Yakuza genre, and they're kind of niche, I suppose, but they are newer. Probably some of the newest Yakuza films I've watched, because usually I'm watching the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s Yakuza films, which are charming because of how low budget and crappy the footage is, and that I like that. But it was fun seeing a new one in HD. Watched Heart 8, the Paul Thomas Anderson film. I've now finished PTA's filmography. It's decent. That's all I'll say about that. Then, last thing I will talk about before we continue is the great filmmaker King Hu. King Hu is one of the originators of the wuxia genre from China, Taiwan, all that. Sorry, I've mentioned Taiwan. Our podcast has now been banned in China. Thank you. Goodbye. But King Hu, he worked in Hong Kong and Taiwan. Excellent director. Not particularly well known in the, or at least he doesn't get a lot of due in the art house genre community. Obviously, he's in the Criterion Collection, so he gets some recognition there. But even then, on like the Criterion subreddit, I get the feeling that he's not really mentioned all that often. I think he should be, considering that he is one of the originators of an entire genre that people seem to like.
Well, we will be talking about him shortly.
Yes, we will. Oh my goodness,
Yes.
Something. Why? Maybe enlighten people. Why will we?
Well, there's a movie that I brought to Jacob's attention that looks really good, and that movie is Goodbye Dragon Inn.
Yeah, there's my copy.
Really difficult. Oh, there we go. It's a movie about a closing Taiwanese film theater on its last night of screening movies, and the last movie that they show is Dragon Inn, a film by this guy. So we're gonna do a double feature of Dragon Inn and Goodbye Dragon Inn.
Now maybe not next episode, but the episode after that. We'll do that.
Yes.
And so yes, I'm a big fan of King Hu as a director. It really just boiled down to Dragon Inn and A Touch of Zen. A Touch of Zen is one of those films where I watched it the first time and was like, this is interesting. It's doing something unique. And I moved on. And then I just kind of kept thinking about it, and it grew in my mind over the months, years, maybe at this point. I can't remember the last time I watched it for the first time. But it's now one of my favorite films. I think it's at the very end of my.
You've only
favorite
seen it once?
3 times. Seen it 3 times now. And I think it's like number 48 or something on my top 50 favorite films of all time list. I have the Criterion on the shelf back there. It's an epic film. It is if you like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it is like the original. King Hu very much inspired Ang Lee later on to make that film. And I had seen Touch of Zen, Dragon Inn, and I wanted to see more of his oeuvre, his filmography. So I sought out a film called The Legend of the Mountain, which is his 1979 film that he actually made. He went to South Korea to make that because South Korea was the government was offering film grants to filmmakers to come to South Korea to make movies. But the deal was he had to use primarily South Korean crew, and he had to make 2 movies. So he made Legend of the Mountain and another film, which I also watched, Raining in the Mountain. Legend of the Mountain is one of the most interesting films I've ever seen. And if you like art house films, I recommend it fully 100%. If you don't recommend it at all. Don't, which is strange.
It's one of those
movies where like there's so much that you could take issue with, and yet it's kind of perfect for what it is, because it's very much doing its own thing, and it is such a slowly paced film. With that being said, it is slowly paced to build up this kind of creepy atmosphere, and I don't really want to talk much about what it's about, but it's about a scholar who goes to has to transcribe a magical Buddhist sutra to give to the government, as one does. The sutra is you're supposed to chant it, and it releases the souls of like a battlefield or something. And he goes to a fort on a mountain to transcribe it, and strange things happen there. Like the first 20 minutes is him walking through wonderful scenery. And it sounds boring, but I think it's possibly the most interesting walking sequence I've seen that is just walking, of course. Because obviously there are walking sequences with more than just walking. There's walking and talking sequences.
The entirety of Before Sunset.
But like if you really gravitated towards the running and walking parts of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, maybe you'll like the first half an hour of this film.
That's my favorite part.
Of course, as it should be. But it takes its time, and once you get to where he's going, it really is effective at building up this creepy atmosphere. And it's such a unique expression of Chinese, Taiwanese, that kind of culture. It is definitely a film that could only be expressed in those terms, and is very much kind of sharing that. I think it's might be based on an actual legend or a fable from China. I don't know because I'm not familiar, but the film acts like it is a fable or something. and it's it gets to be a heck of a lot of fun at the end, because there are like epic drum battles. I won't say any more than that. I won't explain, but it's worth it for that alone. And it's like 3 hours long. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool film.
The
Very
sweet
unique.
spot.
Yes. And I watched Come Drink With Me, Raining in the Mountain, and The Fate of Lee Kong. 3 more King Hu movies. They're all lots of fun. The Raining in the Mountain is beautifully shot. Great. Fate of Lee Khan. It has inspired me to start writing a Western that is based on the film, kind of, or at least the idea of that. And it's pretty cool because it's a wuxia martial arts film, but it takes place 90% of the film is just inside of a tavern, an inn.
Interesting.
And it's very intelligently directed, and like it's like back and forth, and there's intrigue and people betraying and there's subterfuge, and it's a fun film. Very highly recommend. King Hu, great director, doesn't get enough watches from Western general audiences. I think you should. That's what I have to say about that.
Classic.
All right. So there was our rundown of what we've been watching. Obviously, we've been watching more, but I think it's time to get on to our films. First film of the day is Ghostbusters. Chandler, since you had never seen this before, would you like to introduce the film? And
yes.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters is a 1984 air quotes comedy about ghost hunters. It's one of those movies that I haven't seen up until this point. It's a movie that our friend Nick, really wanted me to see because he has. He really wanted me to see it because he thinks I'd really like it. It's one of those movies that I've always avoided because everything about it didn't seem like it was up my alley, and I can safely say that I was correct. I knew.
Sad.
It's a good movie. It's fine. I don't have the same adoration for it, and I'm wondering if part of that was just the fact that I haven't grown up with it. Did you grow up with this movie at all?
I wouldn't say I grew up with it. I did watch it at obviously a younger age. I think maybe like early teens I watched it. Maybe even earlier, maybe like 10, 11. Anyway, I wouldn't say it was not a staple of my childhood in any way, but I think I watched it maybe twice in my childhood, before college, all that kind of stuff.
But yeah, the general idea of the movie is that Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and Bill Murray are Ghostbusters, the titular Ghostbusters. They're ghost hunters in New York. That's the whole movie. It's a movie that I appreciate. I just don't. It's hard to judge it because it's a comedy that I don't find funny. There's like 2 parts that I find kind of funny, but for the most part, I feel like a lot of the comedy comes from Bill Murray, who I find kind of annoying in this movie.
That's fascinating because part of it is you're not supposed to like him. Like he's kind of a schlubby character guy. Like that's the whole shtick of what he's doing. So I guess I can understand it from a certain point of view, but I also find his performance hilarious. I think he's the funniest part about the film. So
I find Harold Ramis very funny. That's about it. Bill Murray, the thing is about this, I know a lot of people who really like this movie. Part of the reason is that they love Bill Murray because he treats the whole thing like a joke. Because I guess he didn't really have the confidence in a movie like this for good reason. It's a very odd concept. So it's sort of like that mentality creeps into his performance in a way that just annoys me because it sounds like it feels like every line of dialogue he has to forcefully interject some sarcasm to let the audience know that he does not have a lot of writing on this.
See, I read it completely differently because it's kind of like the point of the character in that he kind of doesn't care about anything other than making a quick buck or getting a woman or whatever. And, he's a schlubby guy. The first scene I find is very funny. He's testing psychology into a guy and a girl. And obviously he's sweet on the girl and hitting on her subtly.
Yeah.
Because everything she says is right. He's testing extrasensory perception. If they can guess what's on the backside of a card he's holding up. And the guy gets one right and he's like, no, sorry, wrong. And I just find like his devil may care, who gives a fuck attitude to be funny. And it works for the character and whatever that is.
See, that's the thing, is that I watched that scene and I understood how people could find it funny, but I just don't. And there's no way that I can look at it to a point where I would find it funny. And that's basically the whole movie. It's that I watch these scenes and I think I can see how someone would find this funny, but my sense of humor does not align with the sense of humor of this movie.
Yes, but I think you can at least recognize that there is pretty good characterization there for Bill Murray, whether or not you like it. Like, the film makes it work, and there's a point to his actions, and they set up a character and reasons for why he does things later on in the film, going to the end.
That's why I can't say this is a bad movie. It's just not a movie I enjoy.
Which is fair, and I guess it's fair enough. I don't know. I find what? Not hard to believe, but annoying. You don't like it, but it's not. This was never my hill to die on. This was Nick's deal. Have you told him your thoughts?
I alluded to the fact that I thought it was okay. I haven't expressed it outright. I think the first time that we recorded this, I mentioned the idea that I think Ghostbusters is more, or Gremlins is more my thing, because these were the two biggest movies of the summer of that year. Both comedies aimed at teenagers, came out the same summer of '84. And then I watched Gremlins shortly after Ghostbusters, and Gremlins is different because Ghostbusters, I can admit, like there's some genuine wit and cleverness to the comedy. It's dry, it's sarcastic, it's very dry. It's got, I love it. Some great satirical representations of those in academia, and then you have Gremlins, which is just fucking stupid. And then I realized, watching both these, where I realized to myself that my sense of humor is degraded to the point where I laugh at Gremlins and not at Ghostbusters. But again, it's the things that I enjoy about this movie that keep me from saying it's a bad movie. I really like the ghosts.
Yes. Like, I think we've both seen the 26. Have you seen the 2016 one? Yeah. So the ghosts in the 2016 one are like giant piles of shit wandering around screen, and like there's no sense of tension or stakes within that film.
They're not very creatively designed either.
No. What was, like, in the opening scene, that one guy is trying to get out of the mansion. Gabe from The Office.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, so he died? Because, like, I think it cuts on him screaming as the ghost. Like, no, he just shit his pants. Lol. Great. I should take these seriously. And fucking hell. But in, like, the first scene of Ghostbusters is 1984. Yes. Is serious, nice, quiet scene of
kind of spooky.
You're exploring the library and with the librarian, and it happens upon a ghost, and the ghosts aren't threatening, right? Like they're not threatening anyone. No one's necessarily in danger,
like Gremlins.
It doesn't outright state what the ghosts are capable of, what they're going for. So there's a bit of mystery, and the mystery is what keeps the stakes and the tension there with the ghosts.
And it's a lot of variety too, because you have that opening ghost in the library who's essentially just like a zombified specter. You have Slimer, who's just the Wario of ghosts. You got the like skeleton cab driver, that weird little arm thing that flies at you. You got the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man, and you got David Bowie at the end, and it's a good amount of variety.
And I think this is yet another film in the Jaws category of cinema, where because of budgetary and technological limitations, They obviously can't flood the screen with ghosts and everything and do everything necessarily they want to, but the limitations and the budgetary. Oh, Zoom is telling me my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, you paused for a little bit.
So did you, but I think that's my fault. It seems to be fine now. But the budgetary limitations, you have ghosts specifically positioned throughout the film. There's not a lot of them, and the fact that you can't spend so much time on them is it works towards that mystery factor, and you don't overload people with nonsense like the 2016 one does.
Yeah. But again, speaking to just the whole you froze again.
I did. Are we back? I think we're back.
Yes. Just to touch on the structural issues again that I have with it. Like that first scene in the library, it clearly establishes that ghosts are a real thing. And then the formation of the Ghostbusters is shrouded in this doubt, specifically from Bill Murray, where he's like, doesn't believe that ghosts exist. And I find that whole part of the film just to be dull because it's writing on something that we already know is false. And his reaction to seeing Slimer is funny, but I just thought it's such a weird script choice.
See, I'm gonna disagree with you there because I think it clearly delineates like the first act of the film, which is they're employed by the university in some nefarious underground layer, and they get kicked out. And obviously Venkman, Bill Murray's character, it doesn't believe in ghosts. He's just kind of a bit of a hack. And there's a mini arc in that first act of the film of him realizing ghosts are real. So there's a change there. And that realization that they're real spurs his desire to create a small business based around getting ghosts. And that's where the rest of the plot jumps off from. I think that's a well-structured opening setup for a film.
Well, then the other issue I have is the sort of sidelining of Sigourney Weaver's character and subplot until it becomes convenient again. But that's not really that big of a deal. I think the only awful part of this movie is the Dan Aykroyd ghost oral, which is just so stupid.
That I cannot disagree with you there. It's cringe. It doesn't age well.
No, it's not. It doesn't not age well in like Revenge of the Nerds type thing where you're like it's problematic. It's just stupid. And I don't even remember it.
I got to that point in the film. I don't remember this. This is terrible.
It would make more sense if it was Bill Murray's character.
Yes,
it still wouldn't be good. But it would make more sense.
Yes, it would have a reason for being there.
And it would even make more sense if it was someone like Harold Ramis's character, who
might be funnier.
who he's so socially awkward that it could be kind of funny. But you pick the worst character to possibly have this happen to, and it's just I don't need to see Dan Aykroyd's O-face. It's just it's so stupid. But again, filmmaking wise, I love the technology, the concept. I said this last time, but it's one of those concepts that was, as a kid, if this is my introduction to this concept, I feel like I would have had much more adoration for it. But I was a huge fan of Luigi's Mansion, which is the same concept, but in a game that I really loved as a kid. So going back to this, it's hard to separate my introduction to that idea through Luigi's Mansion through this.
Sure.
But if they're catching ghosts, that's cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people gravitate towards that concept because it is unique. I don't think there's really anything else quite like it necessarily. I don't know. Men in Black is kind of like that.
Kind of.
A similar style, not ghosts, obviously, but
similar concept too.
Yes.
The Brothers Grimm. I don't know, not the movie.
Anyway, but when it came out, it was a very unique, original, fun, quirky characters, regardless of what you think of the characters. They are or their arcs or lack thereof. It's quirky and it is interesting. It's doing a unique thing. It's particular. I think it's well shot for the most part. It is it is a solid film with a very fun idea, and that's what people latch onto. And I think that's all it has to be. I don't.
Yeah.
I was never claiming it was any kind of comedic masterpiece, and maybe Nick. I'm not sure Nick would even claim that. I think you might have been pushing it up just because you hadn't seen it. But who knows?
It is enjoyable enough. I wasn't bored. I was bordering on bored, but I wasn't completely bored.
Well, I'm glad you weren't completely bored. It does have.
Have you seen Ghostbusters 2?
I have. It's been so long. So long. I don't remember it. Really. I remember, I think, the ending. Something about the Statue of Liberty and Marshmallow Fluff and the museum in New York. I don't know. It's a strange film. But one of the things you're talking about, like the effects, like really hold up everything. But some of the practical effects are even more fun. There's matte paintings in the film. The Dana's apartment gets blown out at one point, and when the Ghostbusters go up there, there's this great panorama of over Central Park, and it's all painted, the skyline of New York, and on the background of that set, and that's really cool. And then earlier on in the film, when Dana first goes home, she has groceries and she puts them on the counter. Her apartment's obviously haunted, and we see the eggs start like flipping out of the carton, and they land on the counter and start cooking, frying on the counter itself.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an actual counter, and so they must have like made a counter into a stovetop, a fry pan sheet, whatever, which is great. It's just a lot of fun. It's so simple, and yet it's so much fun to watch that happen and know that it's something that's actually happening. It's a real practical thing.
Mm-hmm. There's some stop motion too that looks bad, but bad stop motion is still charming. Stop motion is cute. Yeah. So yeah, I don't hate this movie. I don't even dislike it. It's one of those things where as I tried as much as I could to just not let the legacy of the movie influence my opinion on it. Maybe it did a little bit, but the theme song kicks ass. That much is true.
Of course, it's popular for a reason.
Yeah, it's popular even outside of the movie. It's got Halloween jam.
Yeah, I think it's funny. It's grown on the comedy aspect of it has grown on me. I've never really thought of it as like a comedy per se. It's more just weird, wacky characters do weird, wacky things, and if you laugh, great. But it's always just been a fun kind of sci-fi film, more so than it is a comedy. But this past round of watching it, I was more kind of in tune with laughing at Bill Murray's performance and a lot of the fun, very dry jokes that are kind of littered throughout that you kind of have to find. It kind of makes you work for your comedy. You have to be paying attention to a lot of the small things like in the background, visually, and there's some particularly great stuff when they're in the hotel, the whole hotel sequence in the center of the film, maybe.
Yeah, towards the end.
When they go to catch Slimer in the hotel. That in particular, there's great stuff. And then there's Rick Moranis, who is always just a funny looking man and funny performance.
Funny looking man, funny acting man. He's a funny guy. Huh. Yeah, that part of the movie had the biggest laugh for me, which is when Bill Murray pulled the tablecloth out from under everything, and he said the flowers are still on the table. That I don't know why that part made me laugh hard, but that's about it.
I'm glad you laughed at something.
It's better than the 2016 one. There you go. But that's not saying much.
Yeah. I think the only other thing that I noticed this time around that I thought was strange and silly, I won't even call it funny, it's silly, but when at the very end, spoiler alert, the Ghostbusters are pulling up to the apartment building where Dana is and where Gozer is trying to enter the world from. And in the crowd surrounding them, there are Orthodox Jews, Orthodox Christians, Muslims, like just in the background. And like there's normal crowd members and they're kind of hidden within there. And they're just going crazy for the Ghostbusters. They're like these religious fanatics are cheering on the Ghostbusters. And it's so silly. So freaking silly. I liked noticing that. I'm not sure it's a point of quality or not, but fun detail.
It's like the scene in Hail Caesar.
Arguably a better scene, but who knows?
Well,
So yeah, Ghostbusters. I like it. It's fun.
it's good.
Most people older than our age or older have seen it and have grown up
Yeah.
with it in some capacity, probably. The younger generation probably hasn't.
No.
Should watch Ghostbusters. It's fun. I like it. You might too.
Yeah, you might.
Or you might be like Chandler and not like Bill Murray.
Lukewarm. Now, speaking of a funny movie, our BFI movie of the week, would you like to introduce?
I would. Our BFI movie of the week is Sherlock Jr. It is a 1924 silent film, black and white, obviously, by director Buster Keaton. It is number 59 on the BFI critics list. See if there's anyone interesting who voted for it. Oh, that's right. 25 critics voted for the film. Only one director did. It's
Which is
500
odd.
546th place on the director's poll. Strange. Very, very strange.
They obviously haven't seen it.
Obviously. But one of the things I think I see in the film is definitely it is a piece of film history in terms of like, here is this film, and you can see a lot of things that were done originally here, and you can trace forward in the whole history of film, which I think is something that appeals to critics. I would have thought it would have appealed to directors too, because
I thought if anything it would appeal to the directors, because more so than a lot of the other silent movies of this era, Buster Keaton does some magic.
He uses filmmaking, which is odd to say, but like a lot of silent films are just like, here's a camera, here's some scenes, here's some intertitles to tell you what the characters are saying to each other. But no, Buster Keaton is using his camera, he's moving it around, he's doing fun things with all of that, with himself, with the camera itself. He's using editing. Oh my God. We'll get into that. But anyway, Sherlock Jr. is a very simple story. It's only 45 minutes long, a movie in quotation marks. And it's Buster Keaton plays a film projectionist, a bit of an idiot who's sweet on a girl. He's sweet on a girl. He's a movie projectionist, and he also is an aspiring detective. And things happen, and about 1/3 of the way through the film, he falls asleep, and he dreams of himself in the movie as a famous detective, a la Sherlock Holmes, Hercule Poirot, yada yada yada, and it gets crazier from there. Chandler, what did you think of Sherlock Jr.?
I really like it. I'm going to go ahead and get my one issue with the movie out of the way first. And it's the structure of this movie, where it's like a good bulk of this movie, the best part of this movie, takes place in a dream sequence when he falls asleep in the projection booth. And everything that happens in that dream sequence, while being very fun, ultimately does not matter to the story, because the character of Sherlock Jr., Buster Keaton's character, is so inactive as a protagonist, where his arc is completed while he's sleeping.
Well, he is a little active in the beginning. But
yes.
Yeah, I think he's a weak character. I mean, if you could even call him that, but it's also not really the point, I suppose.
Yeah, that's why it doesn't bother me that much. It's very oddly structured for a feature-length film. Again, feature-length film.
Well, it's saving grace, I think, is like its 45-minute runtime. If this was a feature-length film, I'm not sure it would work in the way it's structured and paced and the characters are created. But the fact that it's only 45 minutes long, it flies by, and it doesn't necessarily need to it's not trying to justify a longer runtime, so it doesn't need to have super in-depth characters or anything necessarily like that. It doesn't go on long enough for its shtick to become offensive.
But Buster Keaton's character in this movie, on paper, he's ineffective, dull, But Buster Keaton himself is just so magnetic as a performer that it's hard to not like him and sympathize with him. There's a very clear divide in this movie, where the beginning, where it's real life, not in a dream. The stunts are still equally kind of insanely coordinated, but a lot more grounded. Whereas when he falls asleep, goes into the movie, that's where shit gets insane. That's where this movie becomes truly great in my eyes.
Yeah. I don't care for that first part of the film particularly. I think it's good. It's well directed.
Yeah.
I actually watched a little bit of it today because it's just trying to, as a refresher for our conversation. And there is some nice visual characterization for Buster Keaton's character. Obviously, there's not anything complicated there, but it's a silent film, so how much could there be to begin with if you're really trying? But there is like fun stuff of where there's this gag, which I didn't find particularly funny, but it is a good character moment of him. He's sweeping up the movie theater, and people keep coming up to him asking, "Oh, I lost $1." And that's a great little characterization moment because he's kind of gullible, kind of an idiot, almost painfully gullible in that moment. But he is, despite being.
But he also, what's important about that is that he makes them immediately sympathetic, because he does keep giving this $1 away.
Yes.
You realize he's not selfish. He respects the truth over everything, even when it's not necessarily truth.
And it's almost a morality kind of film. Like there's a moral to the tale, kind of, sort of. Not really, I suppose, but like
it alludes to a moral.
It begins with a quote. The film, it's like never try to do two things at once or something along that lines. Like that's the moral that the film starts off with. And these days, if you start a movie off with a quote or a moral, you seem to be the most pretentious filmmaker of all time. Back then, it's kind of charming.
Give it a pass.
But it's right, and there's like. There is like a very simple lesson here at the very beginning of like lying and being honest as a person. And it's interesting that there's a great little setup and payoff where he buys a box of chocolates for his sweetheart and wants to appear like he bought her a more expensive box of chocolates. So he changes the number to be $4 instead of $1. And then that comes back to bite him because the guy, his rival suitor who buys a $4 box of chocolates or whatever, puts a stolen pocket watch in his pocket, for like which says like, he doesn't put this pocket watch. He puts the slip because he pawned
the receipt.
it. Yeah. So it's it's a nice little callback, and I feel like it's almost in line with that whole honesty arc of his character. Of like, if you do something dishonest, it'll come back to haunt you. And obviously it comes back to haunt his rival suitor as well, who gets his comeuppance in the end. Spoiler alert. But I mean, that's probably guessed that.
But yeah, it's that comeuppance that, it nothing that he does really factors into this. He kind of just falls asleep while everything gets fixed.
And he does try in the beginning.
Yeah, he does.
Like one of my favorite little jokes in the film is he has his little book of how to be a detective. And like tip number 5 is follow your man closely. And he just literally like runs behind the other guy and is following him less than like a foot away. And it's a funny visual. It doesn't make sense while I'm describing it necessarily, but it is.
He basically mimics this guy's movements while also only being like 2 or 3 inches away from him. So it starts off like pretty insane, and it just keeps getting crazier the more detailed his movements become that he's mimicking on the spot.
A lot of the comedy in this comes from your disbelief, and like how is this actually working out for Buster Keaton? And part of it is like, how can you follow someone that close without tripping or doing something? And it's amazingly well coordinated. And it's not just Buster Keaton doing that. I mean, it is, but it's also the guy in front of him who has to, coordinate his movements too.
But it's that kind of thing that really, to me, it really sort of solidifies the silent film genre, because it's something that is universal. Like, you can show this movie to anyone in any country, any different time period. They'll understand the context of the film and be able to get the story just from the visuals alone. I mean, there's a bit of dialogue or whatever, but the comedy, like, it's just as funny now as it was 100 years ago. It's going to be just as funny 100 years from now because it's just so pure.
And even if you don't find it funny, it is at the very least engaging and still magical to watch. Like, Buster Keaton is a master of visual trickery and doing it for real, not effects, and that comes through. Like, even if you're so used to effects and seeing things that are fake but obviously look photorealistic, I think it still comes across today very, very well. And that's why I think this might be a very good start. Like, if you want to start watching silent films, I might recommend start here because there might be better ones, not
shorter ones,
but there's not necessarily shorter ones. It's short, sweet, and it's still jaw-dropping, some of what he manages to accomplish in this.
Yeah, like diving through the window and then coming out the other side fully dressed as a woman. Crazy. Him diving through a suitcase and coming out the other side of the wall. Insane.
How's he doing?
It's one of those things.
Who knows?
Yeah, you don't. There's no cutting around it. Like some filmmakers later do. And it's one of those things where just for a brief moment, you're mesmerized because you're like, oh, what? How did he do that? Obviously, we know a little bit more, so we can think about it for a few seconds and understand how he did it. But that shock, even I rewatched some of the scenes too, and even though I know exactly how he did it and what happens, it's just seeing it just play out in real time, uncut. It's magic. It's movie magic.
And it's almost like the film is Buster Keaton's style as a filmmaker, as an actor, is putting you almost in a detective role because you're constantly thinking of like, how did he do that? And you're thinking like, could he have done this or that? Like, some things are magic tricks, obviously, and some things are just like feats of well-timed staging. Like there's a great shot where he's on top of the building and there's an entrance toll pole that he grabs onto the top and he follows it down into the back seat of a moving vehicle, which is just wow. It's so charming to watch.
That entire car chase too, where he's on the motorcycle.
It's one of the best car chases.
It is. It's such a long car chase with nobody driving the motorcycle. I still don't even know how he did it.
No one's driving. No one's really following him, really. And yet it's a car chase and it's funny and it's amazing and you don't know how he does it.
Yeah, it starts off crazy because you realize he's going like 60 miles an hour down a road with nobody steering the bike. And then you're like, oh my God, that's insane. And it just keeps getting crazier because then there's another scene where he goes down this bridge that collapses as he rides it without a driver. It's just like, it's that universality of it. You don't need to be from that time period to just look at that and be like, what the fuck is he doing? How are you not dead?
Yeah. If I were, and I do recommend it, I feel like you kind of have to get past the first 15 minutes because that seems more kind of generic silent film-esque with some comedy, it is, at least
it's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all.
Yeah.
It just feels more like what you might expect from a silent film. And it does have some really great like setups and payoffs. And I think it ultimately does really paint him as an idiot, blumbling idiot who all of his plans and desires don't work out, which makes the second half of him in his dream as this detective so exhilarating, seeing all this stuff like work out, and it doesn't even appear to be trying. And so like you have to get past that first part. I didn't find it particularly engaging the second time either, but it's not bad. It's short, and it does a good job of leading into what I think is some of the most creative and fun 45 minutes of filmmaking.
45 minutes, yeah.
30.
Hold on. I'm trying to... I need to pull this up real quick. Yes. Are you familiar with the Yiddish term of the schlemiel?
Yes.
I feel like
explain for the audience though.
Okay. Well, it's like this Yiddish term it's an archetype of Jewish humor. You have the schlemiel and the schlemazel. The schlemiel is the guy who accidentally spills soup on somebody, and the schlemazel is the guy who gets the soup spilled on him. I feel like it's the perfect way to describe like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, because Charlie Chaplin to me always felt like the schlemiel, and I don't find that guy as funny. Whereas Buster Keaton is very much the schlemazel, and that's why I find his movies just a lot funnier without the context. Because they're both similar. They're both silent movie icons, comedy icons. Charlie Chaplin, branched out a little bit more. Buster Keaton sort of lived and died with the silent era, but it's just something about him I find fascinating.
I find, at least between the two, I tend to prefer Buster Keaton. Just in general, obviously, I've seen more of Charlie Chaplin, and Charlie Chaplin has a lot more like really great films per se. But with Buster Keaton, his films just have such energy to them that you don't find necessarily elsewhere in silent films. I mean, even his feature-length film, genuinely feature-length, The General, that just flies by. It's surprising for a feature-length silent movie. But the however slow or boring, however that first 15 minutes is, it's just the rest of the film just flies by. And I think in total, the 45 minutes of Sherlock Jr. is enjoyable, fun, amazing. And it really does, particularly the editing. I think Buster Keaton got the editing down so well, and that really propels the film forward. And he does some fun tricks, some fun visual tricks, that match cuts, some of the probably the best early example of the match cut being used when he's first trying to get into the film, and he keeps falling over and doing stuff, and as he's falling, it cuts to a different scene, and it's like this, he's in the same position, and it's brilliant to watch.
It's playing with cinematic tools in the context of an actual movie. It's
right.
Crazy.
And then like the effect of him walking into the movie itself is seamless as ever. And half of this stuff is like, there's stuff like D.W. Griffith, who is doing narratives and being racist and all that. But like, you look at that, and then you look at Sherlock Jr. and like, I don't know, like Sherlock Jr. feels like the more inspired product on a whole. Like, Birth of a Nation, stuff like that, which unfortunately I have seen. Been subjected to. Sure, like it feels more like an amalgamation of silent film things from different films and all that kind of stuff, and isn't particularly original except for the fact that it's racist. That feels very original and unique to that film. But
The General is a nice
Keaton,
in between.
Yes, it is a nice in between. But Buster Keaton constantly feels original, like he's him and the creative team working around him, because I don't want to give it all to Buster Keaton necessarily.
Yeah.
But you feel like genuinely doing new things with cinema and on the camera, and it shows.
It's just it's amazing to me that he can get such visceral reactions out of me to his filmmaking almost 100 years later.
Yeah,
that's why I just think he's perfect, and his movies are just going to get better with time. Although, ironically enough, I'll just say this is not the one I would choose to be on the BFI list,
and that's fine. We for those new viewers, in case you are one, we always go. We do our little review. Hopefully, sometimes we manage to stay spoiler free and then have a delineation between those two. Sometimes we don't. Anyway, and then after all that's done, we go into do you think it deserves to be on the BFI list, where we presumptuously tell the hundreds of critics who voted on that list what we think they should have done. And we do often tell them that they're wrong. And in this case, I think we're both going to say they're wrong.
Not completely wrong.
Not because it's a bad movie. Not because we're not. I don't think we are knocking or demeaning the film by saying it doesn't deserve to be on the BFI list. It's more of a practical matter, I think.
Yeah. This one, it's really good. But that really, the magic of this movie is shoved in between some weird storytelling decisions. And I know that The General is coming up, and I much prefer The General as a complete narrative experience. Aside from the fact that it's about those bastard Union soldiers, those devils, those northern
sticking
devils.
it to the Unioners,
those pesky Yankees.
Yeah, this one's weird because there have been it's a short film technically by our standards today, and I've expressed on the podcast before my reluctance to put short films on this list because they feel different.
But I'm not as opposed to this as I was to like A Day in the Country.
Well, yes,
because that is not only a short film; it's an unfinished movie.
Yeah, but it just feels weird. Like, okay, so you're gonna call a 45-minute short film, however creative it is, and you're gonna put that up against what's a movie? What movie did we just watch? Aguirre? No, Aguirre's not the best. Anyway, it just feels weird comparing it to feature-length films, and that isn't necessarily a disqualifier in and of itself for me. Just that added on to there is another Buster Keaton I like more, and then I think this one does have its issues. I would have liked some more engagement with that first half. I don't know. It just seems more like the story is superficial, and everything on top of it is the creativity within Buster Keaton's acting, his stunts, and the editing, and that stuff I really like. But I think there's other films I think deserve to be on here over this. So that's it.
Just barely missed the mark. Yeah. Good.
Certainly one of the best, greatest films ever made. Not so sure about 100.
Yeah. But it's a definite recommend, I think, from both of us.
It's an easy recommend too. It's on YouTube for free. It's short. If you want to watch a silent film you never have and you're at the very least curious, I think this is the one you should go with.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now we're done. Goodbye.
Finished. Round 2.
Yes. So, next week, do we want to talk about Minari?
Right now?
No, not right now. Next episode.
Yeah.
Next episode.
I mean, might as well, just because while it's still in our brains.
So we'll discuss Minari, and our BFI movie of the week next week is The Conformist, the Bernardo Bertolucci film from 70s, 80s. I don't know.
It's Italian.
That's what it is. And then the week after that, we will do Dragon Inn and Goodbye Dragon Inn, neither of which are on the BFI, but
for fun.
For fun. For the culture.
For fun. And then after that, we'll do, I don't know, maybe Blow Up, Blow Out.
Oh, the Oscars. Do you want to say anything about the Oscars?
The Oscars?
Don't have to. They're fine. The 2021 Oscars celebrating the year of 2020. Skippable year in the Oscars overall, probably. I think we all got that sense anyway. I don't think anyone needs us to tell them that, but I don't know. It's fine. I think I did my predictions and I got 15 right, 7 wrong. So
pretty
good. I think. Good. Yeah.
I didn't even bother this year.
Do you think so? Nomadland won Best Picture. Is that something you are down with, or?
I'm not opposed. Opposed. It was a good movie. I like that movie. Just as it happens every year, now that it's Best Picture, I see a lot of people shitting on the movie. Just on the online discourse. I like it. But it's one of those things where I wasn't passionate about I wasn't really passionate about any of the movies. I mean, I liked most of these movies, but I didn't have, last year was great because I had a movie that I desperately wanted to win, and I had a movie that I desperately wanted to lose, and they both seemed equally like neck and neck. So it was a fun year.
Wanted to lose?
Joker.
Oh, Joker, of course.
Joker, 1917. I don't remember what else was nominated that year, but those two in particular, I thought they had a decent chance at winning. No, it was 1917 that I really thought was going to win. So
1917, still our least viewed YouTube video. Fun fact. I'll keep bringing that up every time.
Dumb movie.
The only thing, I haven't seen Soul yet. That's the one.
Neither have I.
biggest like gap. I think I fully expect to like it. I mean, everyone says it's great. But it was one of the reasons why I predicted Minari to win Best Original Score, and I predicted it solely because I hadn't seen Soul, so I couldn't really comment. But I really like the Minari soundtrack.
I like it too, but you know what was my favorite soundtrack of the year, Jacob?
Mank.
That is the one award that I actually wanted Mank to win.
I was surprised that Mank won for Best Cinematography. Not that it doesn't deserve it. I actually was thinking about predicting Mank simply because I'm such a fan of black and white cinematography that just is like a principled vote. But then I ultimately went with Nomadland, which I think it's a beautiful film.
Yeah.
It's also like News of the World. Still, I haven't seen that. My mom wants to see it, so I'll probably watch it eventually. The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Looks awful.
What the hell are those doing in the best cinematography category? Like, no, seriously, what are they doing there? Minari looks gorgeous.
What else Minari is not? Oh, I didn't know that.
Sound of Metal. That's a well-shot film.
Great fucking movie.
Certainly more so than the Trial of Chicago 7. I mean, just in general, if you like that film, you were suckered.
You're
can't
a sucker
if you like Trial of Chicago 7.
I can't comment on any other element or facet of the movie, but Tenet was also a very good looking movie.
Yeah. I haven't seen
Christopher Nolan
looks
he does one thing he does well.
Yeah.
I don't mind Mank getting cinematography. I'm not
I don't
it was
mind
fine.
it, no. It is a good well-shot film.
Yeah. If Mank deserved anything in the technical side, I thought the sound they did more to mimic the sound of the 40s than they did the cinematography. Because they recorded everything on like vintage or relatively vintage equipment and then played it back and recorded the playback in like an echoey building to sort of get that feel. I thought that was pretty cool, but obviously Sound of Metal, if it was going to win anything, it was going to be sound. So I'm fine with it. Yeah. I do think it's absolutely hilarious that Anthony Hopkins won. That is by far the best part of the night. So fucking funny.
I think my only complaint with this Oscars, like real complaint, the only thing I think they really got wrong is Best Original Screenplay. They gave to Promising Young Woman, which I watched, and it's good, but it is not Best Screenplay worthy. It is kind of your run-of-the-mill, nice, fun drama that comes out every year. Like it's nothing that's special. It's not a particularly monumental film or anything like that. I'm like, why would you give it to that?
See, I thought Minari had a really good screenplay.
It does. That's the one I wanted Minari to win, and I predicted Sound of Metal because I thought Sound of Metal had a pretty great screenplay as well.
Now it did. It did.
And somehow they went with Promising Young Woman. Okay, then.
I have no desire to see that movie.
All right. Other than that, that's all I have to comment on. For the most part, it was predictable, bland Oscar year.
Yeah, that's why I'm not offended. I'm not like hyped.
No. There's not anything to be really offended by because you're not invested. But do the 2021 Oscars deserve to be on the BFI Best Film of All Time?
No.
Okay. All right.
If you're gonna put any Oscar on the BFI list, it's the 2020 Oscars.
So next time we're going to be reviewing The Conformist, Bernardo Bertolucci, and Minari.
Minari.
Stay tuned for that.